Hello and welcome to Module 2, which is entitled Working with Risk. This is the part of the course where I intend to focus a lot of attention around the phrase risk assessment. I'm going to suggest it's a much maligned phrase. Where's the risk assessment? Have you done the risk assessment? We can't go forward until we've got a risk assessment. It's one of those phrases that can often bring to mind bureaucracy, ticking boxes, and it's maligned possibly for good reasons. But in this module, I want to address it face on in terms of the importance of risk assessment and its specific place within how we go about this term that I use, which is about working with risk. We have to have information. Risk assessment is that trigger that prompts us to go and search for information, to constantly develop more information, and to focus on the quality of the information. So, in terms of making good quality risk decisions, they do need to be underpinned by good risk assessment. So, in this module, I want to address one or two quite practical issues. I know from my own experience, working in and alongside many organisations, that practitioners in particular will be put under pressure to get the risk assessment done in a very short period of time, perhaps on a first contact with somebody. So, one of the many themes throughout all of this course will be about language, and I'm going to challenge that language. It's not possible to get a risk assessment done in the way that is sometimes expected. We do have to compile risk information. We do have to make judgments, even in that kind of first contact, even with very limited information. But in this module, I want to identify what a risk screen is from what a risk assessment is. And that it's more realistic to expect somebody to be able to do a risk screen based on an initial contact and very limited information. And that will flag up some of the gaps that we will fill over time that becomes the risk assessment. Because that to be a meaningful process or concept, it takes time. It takes sources of information. It takes inquiry. It takes searching. What I also want to look at in this particular module is what we mean, being clear what the definition of risk assessment is, how we put that into practice, and I'll be looking at some of the tools that I've developed over time. Now, I have to preface this by saying I'm not presenting these as the tools you need to be using yourselves. You will have demands depending on the job role that you do, expectations within the job that you do. But I want you to look at the information I present, where I will talk about the way that I've developed and designed tools, what the reasoning is behind some of the design, what goes into some of those elements of design, and to use that as a template to look at and compare what it is you're expected to use. But more importantly, to look at it as a template that can be used in the day-to-day practice of connecting with people, working with people, talking with people, not an additional form that I'm expecting you to fill in on top of everything else that you do. Throughout the whole of this course, I want this to be very practical, offering practical ideas, concepts, tools, guides for you in terms of your thinking about your work with risk. And for those of you that have an interest, then beyond the next introductory video, I will give a 5-minute or less than 5 minutes if I can summary of the history of risk assessment, how that's emerged. As with all of these modules, they'll be video based, but you can also not just download the videos, you can access the audio, download that, you can access the narrative that will be there, that will come up with the videos, but I've also made sure I've edited the narrative as a document that will be included alongside the PDF information sheets worksheets. I also want to just finish off by mentioning the concept of risk formulation. So when we've developed that risk assessment information, how do we formulate and think about our theory about what's going on, what the risks are, and how does that inform then the decision that we go on to make? So that said, dive into the materials, and I hope you gain a lot from Module 2, Working with Risk.